In the gym and in the car, with our advice you could go far. We fuck things up and we make mistakes, and talk about our sexy dates. We host events and go to clubs, but most of all we're still in love. It's getting hard for this to rhyme, just as well 'cause it's bed hopping time. Hello and welcome to the Bed Hoppers podcast. My name's Mr. H.
I am Mrs. H.
Thank you for joining us today as we ebb ever closer to our 200th episode. If only we had a plan in place to celebrate that.
What number is this?
I don't know. It's a number. It's like 19 something or other.
We're nearly there.
We're very nearly there, and then we can pack it all
and
in,
then you
fold
can
away,
pack it all in.
and burn it all to the ground.
Delete
all.
everything.
Yes, it's all gonna disappear. That's great.
Wow.
Probably. I don't know. Keep listening. Find
It'll
out.
descend into mediocrity.
Will Mr. H finally reach a breakdown? Will Mrs. H finally give a shit? Who knows?
I'll
Turn up for
launch
more.
my own rival podcast.
Really?
Point. Yeah.
Pop bedders.
Oh. No, I don't know what I'd call a podcast on my own.
Really?
H.
Just Mrs. H's sleazy bedtime.
I think it would do quite well for
Sleazy
about 2
bedtime
weeks,
trick?
and then I'd run out of things to say.
I think, I don't think that it'd actually get launched. You don't have the
Oh
technology.
my God. I'd find someone.
You'd find someone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's nice of you.
Yeah.
Am I dead at this point, or are you just doing your own
Who
thing?
knows?
You're just like, I don't
You've
care.
gone into your mediocrity slump.
My
you
medi-
don't care.
My mediocrity slump.
Yeah, it's like one of your albums.
My mediocrity slump has lasted at least 197 episodes, so why not carry on, right? Exactly. But thank you for joining us today. We have got some delightful special guests with us. We're going to play a recording where we spoke to them via the power of Zoom. Not that the method of which, means a lot to you necessarily, gentle listener, but I just wanted to say Zoom.
Very of its time, isn't it, Zoom?
Very 2020.
Yeah.
Very popular.
Still around, though.
Other recording platforms are, of course, available. But yeah, we speak to the delightful Ticket2Ride,
Yes.
and we find out about being relatively straight, right?
Relatively
about
straight, yeah.
not being able to fantasize about stuff. They talk about their origins, how they came together, and they touch briefly on their superhero name, which is fun.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, all sorts of things.
Don't give any spoilers away,
Oh,
though.
yeah, but you're on the roller coaster now, so
Yeah.
these don't count as spoilers. It's all the same content, so I can tell you a little bit about what you're going to hear. But the cool thing is, right, the really cool thing that's totally different to that, and something that we may or may not mention throughout the course of the interview, I can't remember, I edited it like a couple of days ago, so it's well past that time, innit, is that we've actually got an announcement.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is it that you're retiring from a show?
No, it's not that I'm retiring from the show. And I did hear the round of applause that echoed out across the nation. In fact, across the globe.
nation?
The nation, yes.
Wow.
Yes, he's finally stopped talking. Well, it'll take more than that to stop me. However, we want to announce a wonderful new event. We're pairing with delightful Kate from Wanderlust Swingers
course.
once more.
Wonder Hoppers.
Wonder Hoppers, as we've word smashed the thing. Someone did that. That's a thing. Anyway, on the 19th, that's Saturday 19th of April,
Yeah.
we are hosting a social event in Manchester.
We're heading up north.
And you might say, why Manchester? Well, that's because Kate's never been and wanted to go there.
Do you know what? I've never been either.
I have been to Manchester many, many times, but not for a long while. Anyway, the point is if you're up north, right, and you're not down south, you can actually come along and come to a social that we're hosting. It's going to have fun, games, interactive stuff. It's all going to be really cool. And also, you don't have to travel so far. You don't have to come all the way down to the south to do it. We have to travel for a long time
We'll
to get...
do that for you.
Like
we'll
the bare
travel
necessities
there.
will come to you.
We will.
And if you look under the rocks and plants and get a glance at my fancy pants and maybe try a few. But anyway, we're going to do that. So that's something that we've announced. The tickets available via the show link. Show links, notes, whatever ones it is that's underneath the podcast where it's all written down, whatnot. You can click on that or copy and paste it, I don't know, depending on your browser or whatnot. And it will take you to a place where you can grab those tickets. Now, of course, you may be in the south thinking, oh man, I really want to go, but it's such a long distance.
Well, we're doing it.
Well, we're doing it. So you can do it. You can grab your tickets and travel up. And then we can all send each other voice notes in the car. That'll be fun, won't it? We could be like, hey, this is like your own private personal podcast or something like that. I don't know.
We'll be Easter bunnies that weekend.
We
'Cause
will.
it is in the middle of Easter.
It
We do
is-
know this.
We know that can be a challenging time, but fuck the kids. We're not saying fuck the kids.
You
but-
can't say that.
Yeah, fuck the kids. Like, have a great time without them. They'll get over it. Whatever childhood trauma
It's
they've
just one
received.
day.
It's just one day.
Maybe.
It's probably they've had worse trauma at some point or
Oh
other.
my God.
And this will help you get closer to your partner or find other partners if you're a single person and have an enjoyable night. And you can't buy that sort of happiness. Well, you can by
You
purchasing
can buy
these
a
tickets.
Ticket for that
there we
happiness. Easter happiness.
go. Easter happiness at our Manchester.
There may or may not be chocolate. I don't know.
I don't know what's going on.
I mean, there's got to be some chocolate, right?
No, I don't think there is chocolate.
Oh.
I think if there is chocolate, it will be chocolate that you've bought and put in the car and taken with
Surely
you.
there'll be an Easter-themed cocktail.
I don't look. You're making up shit.
I am.
You have no idea.
Oh,
You
we'll see.
literally have no clue. You've not even seen the ticket page.
There's a ticket page.
Yes, there is a ticket
No, I
page.
haven't seen it.
It's been around for weeks.
Oh,
It's been in our Discord for weeks.
wow.
So one of the things we do is if you
Yes.
come to one of our
Yes.
events or you're one of our patrons, then actually you get access to the pre-sales and you can get your tickets early. Sometimes there's a discounted price for that because we're nice people occasionally, or you get to see what's going on. So also, if you're a patron, you get to hear special episodes like the one-off we recorded with Kate.
There was a one-off.
The one-off.
Yeah.
We recorded an episode. It was cool. And it was literally just for patrons talking about the
Yeah.
Candyland event. So if you have a curiosity about Candyland and what went on behind the scenes, was it good? Was it fun? Spoiler.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can become a member of our Patreon and listen to that and also listen to episodes in advance.
Yes.
We give you access like normally a few days in advance, sometimes much, much more than that if we've pulled our fingers out of our asses.
I mean, this is already out there for the patrons, right?
Well, yes. I mean, not this bit. This is
No,
new
this
to
is
the patrons,
new.
but they've heard the actual interview
have.
that we conducted with Ticket2Ride. So, in summary, Ticket2Ride interview coming up and tickets to our Manchester social on the 19th of April
Yeah.
available in the show.
And before that, we're going to Thailand.
Yes. So
Yes.
we're just talking about stuff that we're doing now.
I'm just like excited because next month we're going to Thailand.
So what I thought, right, on the build up to Thailand,
Yeah.
I want to look my best. I want to get all this, this good behavior.
Gotta get your gains.
Got to get my gains. Got to get my 6-pack going and all that sort of shit. That's never actually happened, by the way, gentle listener.
Why stop there? Go for an 8-pack.
Go for an
Be
8-pack.
like Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren has an 8-pack.
Yeah.
You are, of course, referring to the undercover boss SNL.
Yeah, but
I
it
think it is.
resonates with me.
Yes.
I like to think that Kylo Ren does have an 8-pack.
I heard Kylo Ren has an 8-pack. Anyways, so we've got that coming up. So we thought we're going to be really good. We're going to have like a really wholesome sort of lead up to this. No, literally every weekend that we've got up to that point, we have another adventure.
Bit busy. Yeah, but life is for living.
It
and
is.
in the week, you can be good.
You have to go on living.
Do you know he's bloody 71 now?
Yes, I do know that he's bloody bloody
That's
71.
outrageous.
He was like 92 in Buffy.
You asked if he was a vampire.
He's supposed to be ageless. You've let us down,
Yeah,
Spike,
but
James Masters, whatever your name
The
is.
actor is 71. I can't get over that.
Really? You'd probably get under it though.
No, he's 71.
You
babe.
sure?
But also, that is like mad.
Is-
71. I remember watching Buffy and thinking, wow, he's hot.
Are you sure it's 71 and not like 61?
No, he's 71. I've read it.
You read
Not
you
on
found-
Reddit. I don't
okay.
go on Reddit. It's horrible.
It's like the dark web
But
for you,
like,
isn't it?
is like a dark web.
Mm.
But I have read it somewhere that he is 71.
Okay. Well,
Shocked.
if you watched Buffy back in the day and you enjoyed Once More with Feeling, good on you.
Go and watch
Good-
it again while he's young.
Well, he's forever young, locked in place, and
Oh, dear.
enjoy some of the
yeah. I was shooketh.
shooketh that you've discovered.
But one day we'll be 71.
Well, hopefully that's the
We
plan.
may be doing the podcast still,
Probably, I'll be like, and now episode 3992.
where some 71-year-olds just get on shots.
Well, the thing is, right? I know someone out there will do the math, and someone will be like, no,
God.
actually, Mr. H, what you're saying is that you'll be on episode 392.
Well,
And this is the
that's-
worst
yeah.
podcast episode ever. We're still scrabbling around in the dirt for content like normal. But anyways, so we've got that coming up.
yeah,
We've got some busy weekends and
Very
hopefully some
busy.
different things that we'll be talking about
Yeah.
soon enough.
Yeah.
We're going to keep doing some interviews because they're really fun. Hopefully you're enjoying them. If you'd like to be interviewed, get in touch.
Yes.
And we'll see what we can do about that. Right. Let's play the thing.
We've got something that's just for you. Holy shit, it's an interview. I'd like to welcome to the show today some guests who are fresh off the back of Candyland event with us. I want to welcome B and J. We'll have no snickering with the BJ comments. We've already been through that. But welcome to the show.
They are sweet like ice cream. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Joining us today, right? How do you feel? How are you doing? You okay? You ready to rumble?
Pretty good. I think it's fair to say we've been more alive in the past than we are heading into this week. We're what, on a Thursday night, Wednesday night? Wednesday night. We're doing all right. We're good.
Swing over is just about gone from the
All
week.
the bang over. I've heard.
The bang over, yeah.
Swing over's good. That works as well.
Yeah.
Swinger flu in the post.
Yes.
Always.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't get swinger flu, there's always the fear of it because you've spoken so much and talked so much. Well, maybe it's just me. My throat feels sore anyway. And I'm like, is this going to develop into something
So
horrid?
nothing to do with then.
Well, but that's the thing. You don't know. Is it swinger flu or is it the talking? It could be a thrilling combination of the two.
It could be both.
Yeah.
It was a Saturday morning. My voice was very much half an octave lower than it normally is. And it was like, no, this is because Friday was loud and there was lots of talking. Like that's all this is. Nothing is developing here.
And that was before the room crawl.
And before the room crawl, yeah.
Oh, that room crawl does take it out of you. It's tremendous fun, but you end up speaking so much. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's super hot as well. It's really, really hot. It wipes you out for a bit.
Definitely.
Do you feel replete with peopling then?
Yeah, we did a lot of peopling.
I mean, do you need air quotes there for peopling?
Mingling. We did a lot of mingling.
We did a lot of mingling.
Oh, you're calling it now. All right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
that was on the agenda. Mingling.
Was that
it was good. I think we could have peopled harder, but I think the level of peopling was sufficient. Like we're topped up for a little while, so that's good.
Well, that bodes well. So we're going to jump straight in and focus on you folks instead of every bugger else. So how would you describe yourselves? You knew this was coming and you got to do it for each other. Go.
B has actually described himself in a passing conversation. And so I'm going to do that first. And I'll tell you the words that I would use. So he says that sarcasm is his love language, and excessive sarcasm means that he's comfortable with you. Self-depreciating and a cunning linguist is how he would describe himself, which I would agree with all of that. But I would also say funny and a handsome geek. I'm going to add
very fair. He was very generous about himself. Very, very generous.
Well, I was put on the spot in a similar situation. and as we might come on to later, Jay sometimes struggles with how to express things. So that was just what kind of came to mind in a self-depreciating fashion, I might add.
And not into sarcasm.
No, exactly. No sarcasm at all.
No. It kind of reminded me of Blind Date, to be fair.
Oh, yeah. When they used to do that little intro and describe themselves in the third person.
Yeah, it could do with being punnier if it was some Blind Date, though, I think.
Now's your chance. No pressure.
Well, no, I'm not sure I can do the same for Jay. I think my description of her would be that she is kind of cuddly and curvy, but curvy in all the right ways, because curvy as a definition, I think, is quite a terrible one. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To me, it means she's just right. And there's a good old dash of nerdery and stuff in there as well, I think. So we balance each other out quite nicely.
Perfect. And can you tell us about how you got started in all of this lifestyle nonsense?
We're about coming up on 2 years into this, not quite, but almost 2 years. It sort of stemmed from we kind of realized that a lot of our traditional old friend group that we'd had for years had sort of disintegrated or dissolved, and that quite a lot of the people that we were checking in on and used to keep in touch with weren't making any efforts to check in on us and keep in touch with us. So we sort of backed ourselves away a little bit and found that, like, well, hang on a minute, where do we go find new friends? And similarly to you guys, actually, I think we'd always kind of watched Playboy swing back in the day, and there was always kind of the talk about the connections you make and the friendships you make. So we kind of ended up with a weekend where we had the opportunity to go to one of the local clubs. We'd kind of talked about it on and off, and we plunged in.
Yeah, so we went to one of our local clubs on a night where there was a massive concert in town. So the first night we turned up, I think there was probably 10 of us in the club. There were 2 women of which I was one. It was mildly terrifying at that point. And every time one or the other one of us went to the loo, someone would come over and go, so what are you looking for? And, oh, well, are you sure you don't want a single guy? We're like, no, we're okay, thanks. But yeah, it did thankfully fill up a little bit later on. But that was it then. That was us in.
Yeah, we didn't have a terrible time of it. And we kind of in our first couple of months had a few odd, rocky, weird situations. There was a very steep kind of learning curve with it, but the buzz that we had off that first kind of experience and then the first couple of weeks from there, it's changed, it's morphed. You don't kind of hit those same highs in the same way again, but we're now, like I say, coming up on the 2-year mark, and we've met some fantastic people along the way. And we've also learned that pants off friends are the best kinds of friends, because you can pretty much cover any topic you like, going from stupidity to nerdery to discussions about HRT and periods and vasectomies to sexy pictures and all the things in between.
And often in the same conversation as well.
Absolutely.
Very much in the same conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, who brought it up? Who first brought it to whom?
It would have been me.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. It always, I mean, because we always watch Playboy Swing, we always,
which I had found and put on.
And almost like critiqued, like we knew what we were doing anyway.
But it was kind of like, it was just a nice thing to watch, that like the sort of struggle, if you want to watch something a bit saucy, can be a challenge to find something that's not French and incomprehensible or
my washing machine's broken,
just absolutely ridiculous. So sort of Swing as an emotional lead-in was actually quite a reasonable choice. It wasn't that was a destination we were looking for at the time. It was just that whole having a bit of build-up, having a bit of chit-chat with people, having a bit of fun times, having a debrief was quite a nice kind of non-threatening thing to sit and watch.
Yeah, I think it also fed into the fact that, certainly for me, attraction isn't necessarily physical. It's more to do with the people. So in like the sort of hardcore just turn up and fuck each other doesn't really do it for me on any level. Whereas at least they were real people that you sort of got an insight into their lives and you felt like you knew them in inverted commas, but you got a little bit of their backstory and you saw them chatting and playing games and stuff. So it felt a bit more like you at least got to know them and you could see what was happening that way.
It wasn't necessarily like a particular fantasy or desire that we had to go do stuff with others. It was just, this looks like it could be quite fun. And we've been together for a long time, kind of 20 odd years or so. So we kind of, we get how each other are most of the time, unless we get it wrong, which also happens. But yeah, it just seemed like a good thing to do. And I'm glad we did.
Yeah, I think Swing set us up quite well as well, because in the car on the way there, we were like, right, rules. What's happening with this? What about this? Do we do this? Is this allowed? Is that allowed? What if this happens? So we'd already got a lot of that stuff laid down. And actually looking back now, most of that hasn't actually changed, I don't think.
Although you still wouldn't let me print a contract.
That's all very 50 Shades of Grey, isn't it? When it turns up and has a contract. Although I think you're knocking French films way too harshly there. I mean, why do you think I'm learning Duolingo? It's just so I can understand what's going on in these.
Fair play. No, but you can't deny that if you think of saucy films, something French is what will pop into your mind.
No, I love it. A French film, cinema.
This is true. Did you ever watch? And this is off track, I guess, but that's not unusual for me. The polyamory series, the sort of.
Oh
no.
Yeah, I got the impression there was a little bit more arguing and stuff being set up to be confrontational, which, as much as we enjoy that, isn't necessarily where we thrive.
Yeah. What was the one where they put 3 of them in a house and then sort of
triple play?
Yeah.
And then foreplay.
That was all MTV for me.
Yeah, it got a bit almost Big Brothery, where they were like almost forcing arguments, and that was then immediately
69 Things to Do Before You Die, Toy Ride with Nikki.
Toy Ride, Nikki and Dan.
Nikki and Dan, yeah.
Although the polyamory one was not necessarily inciting drama from the makers of a documentary so much. They did that themselves quite adequately. But I got quite obsessed with it because there was always something we were like, oh my God, look what he's doing now. No, that's never going to work. It was quite interesting to watch though.
But the polyamory bit that led us to Playboy Swing, because we were like, there may be other sort of documentary style reality TV things that are naughty that include actual sex. And then let's go see that's like. So you started a couple of years ago, and What did you go in with? What was your dynamic then, and how has it changed since that point? What's your dynamic now?
Yeah, I think we initially were looking for couples just because that seemed like a sort of sensible starting point. Obviously, given the nights that we were on, that's not really what we found on our first experience. But it was originally our name on the platforms was called testing waters or something along those lines, because that was very much our approach, was just kind of take things half a step, one step, two steps at a time, and see how we felt, how we found it, how we got on. We don't have. Again, this is, I think, one of the things we've learned around singles, couples, throuple, mores, whatever you might call it, that it all can be very situational about what you're looking for. And ultimately, we're just kind of looking to have a nice time with nice people. As crap a word as nice is, it kind of encapsulates what we're looking for on one level. So dynamic-wise, I don't think it's particularly evolved or shifted.
Not massively. No, we've always been together. And then just kind of seen from there. I do sometimes feel like I lose you over the other side of an audience, kind of just occasionally look up to check that you're still there. But
I do feel that I want, for the record, 2 years ago, you to hear you sat here on a sofa saying that I might lose you on the other side of an orgy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was like, he's over there somewhere. Not heard him yelp for help, so he must still be all fine somewhere.
What have you learned about yourselves on that journey?
So for me, it has been massive self-confidence boost, definitely huge self-confidence boost. And funnily enough, literally over the last couple of weeks, as we had New Year and then Candyland, I was looking at my outfits and going, you'd have told me even 6 months ago that is what I would be wearing in public, in inverted commas, to an event, I would have just gone, you must be off your rocker. There was no way. Yeah. So yeah, my confidence has definitely boosted an awful lot.
10 years ago, you said stuff along the lines of, well, why would I buy fancy lingerie? Because I'm only going to take it off again.
Yeah, my lingerie budget has extended somewhat. Definitely. I think that's probably my big one, self-confidence, self-esteem.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's a similar sort of theme for me, I suppose. I struggle quite hard to believe that other people might find me attractive or might like me or want to play with me. So it's a similar sort of self-esteem thing that sort of snowballs a little bit of, like, it just chips away at all those years of being inside your own head and all the nonsense that stems back from when you're young at school and what have you. I guess I've also been on a bit of a fitness kick in the last year, kind of learning to actually run and doing 5Ks and doing a half marathon and losing a ton of weight and swimming and all this kind of stuff. And it's not that is for the lifestyle, but like, by Christ, that's a good motivator to keep yourself honest with that stuff.
Other people see you naked.
It really is, you're right. And it's a good motivator for each other sometimes, I think, because as much as you want to look good in public, naked or whatever your jam is, it's also, I want Mr. H to kind of walk in somewhere with me and be proud to be next to me. And does so much, like, fitness wise, and I'm absolutely shockingly bad at like being anywhere near as motivated as he is. But equally, I don't want to be the weak link and have him look at me and think, oh no, she's just not even trying anymore. So it's a good motivator, I think, for both of us sometimes.
I don't imagine he could ever think that.
No, not at all. Now go and give me 20 press-ups and run around the block a couple of times and it'll be absolutely fine. I do want to say that your outfits on New Year and throughout Candyland were absolutely fantastic. Wonderful. And you both look great. Yeah. Excellent work. Well done. Well done jobs all round. I'm sure if people find your account later on, when we mention it and all that sort of stuff, they'll be able to have sneak peeks of whatever was being worn, maybe, perhaps. I don't know.
I don't know if Candyland is, actually. We can address that.
My Candyland might be on there, I think. Yeah. Or a version of what I wore for Candyland might be on there. I don't know whether my New Year one is on there, but that can be rectified, I think.
I don't even know how you got into that.
It was, fashion show.
What is the easiest thing? It's literally looking at, like, it's all elastic. It's like a climbing harness. So you literally kind of just once you've worked out which way is up, and it's all elastic, so you just step into it and then just put the straps over the top. It's probably easier than putting like a bra and pants on, to be honest.
I think it's designed that way because I think at one point you and I had an embrace, and I think my hand got caught in it, and I think that is by design.
Just slipped, Your Honour.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember at one point you were trying to undo something. I was like, you don't need to undo. Literally, it just like dipped off.
Oh, it's all coming out now, isn't it?
I genuinely don't remember doing that, but that does sound like it would be something I would do.
It does sound exactly like something.
It does sound a lot like something I would do. So that's what you've learned about yourselves. Next
right?
question. Yeah. And in a moment, Mrs. H is going to have a question for you. But what I want to know is, what have you learned about other people?
I think we could sort of covered this one a little bit already, in that part of it is that lifestyle people generally seem to be a bit more chilled out and relaxed about topics that are perhaps more taboo in vanilla life. So conversations that we've had with friends about things like HRT, perimenopause, vasectomies, just generally sex positions, anything, you sort of flows backwards and forwards between that and mundane, this rubbishy thing is going on in my work. So that is really nice, I think, because we did come into this looking for friends, but I don't think we necessarily expected that part of it, for it just to be quite so free flowing.
And I guess maybe a slightly more negative thing is, for such a, on the surface, inclusive and open community, there are still some such weird pockets of closed offness and bigoted mindedness, for want of a better word, particularly around kind of bisexuality in guys and that kind of stuff. And I have seen, again, in our brief time doing this, that sort of is shifting slowly. And it seems to be like spring, that it's kind of shifting a little bit further south down the country, but it hasn't quite got up to where we are yet. But it's nice to see that sort of change in the wind, if you like. But it is kind of weird. It's like we want to accept everything and do this crazy lifestyle stuff, but not that, you dirty pervert, go away.
Yeah.
I find that quite strange.
I do wonder if the recent political landscape in other countries may perhaps influence that, and perhaps not.
I don't think that's helped.
Positive way. And I do think that for the most part, the lifestyle, certainly our little bubble of it, is very inclusive. But you've only got to go to a club by yourselves and without knowing anyone that's going to be there, and you see a completely different side of things. And that can be positive. Yeah. And quite often the groups are really friendly and really out there. But you can also see some more of those negative aspects. And I think we're very fortunate in the little bubble that we tend to live. People tend to be pretty good. There's not so many issues and people tend to be very open and welcoming. But I think that we've all worked hard to foster that between our whole community. But I think once you step out of that, it can be a little bit Wild West in terms of what you're going to get back. And that can be quite hard, I think.
I think one of the other things which, again, never occurred to me is that actually some of the skills you have to learn in the lifestyle in order to deal with people, I've actually found really useful at work. So reading people, body language, dealing with people who are more neurodiverse. And actually someone commented not that long ago, they were like, "You're really good. I feel I can kind of tell you anything." And they were like, "How have you learned this stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I've just sort of picked it up in a sex club."
Saying that you've picked up anything in a sex club is a really fine line.
I picked this up in a sex club.
Other than your pants off the floor.
If you can find them, that is.
Yeah.
Which,
black on black.
Yeah, having seen the chat for Candyland, there's a number of people that are still searching for their pants.
Honestly, we left our play bag behind, and we were fortunate enough to tag on with the other couple who'd left their keys and coat and made it into the club. And just the decimation of what was left behind of knickers and coats and shoes. And that was only on the corridor going past the first set of lockers. Christ knows what the rest of that looked like.
I don't want to know.
We've been in there in the morning a few times where we've been setting up, and it is an interesting sight to behold. We've also been the last people in the club as well, and that's been a fascinating moment.
Never.
Going into a ghost train ride in a fairground went before all the scary stuff's put on, and you go through and think, "Oh my God, this is weird. This is bleak." And then same with the sex club. It's just without all the nice lights and stuff, and without all the the nice bits of stuff around. It just looks
when
really
they put
strange.
the big lights on.
Yeah. We had the big lights put on us, Candyland. That was, and that's not the first time.
Hang on.
Did you get a round of applause?
They did put the big lights on at the end, and we were like, "Oh no, they're just a step away from putting chairs on tables now."
Quite often, when it comes to the hosting, but you don't get a chance to really relax until quite late into the evening. By which time, everyone's buggered off and is doing their own thing, which is great. It means that you've done a good job. That means everyone is having a nice time or whatever. And we did end up playing, but at about quarter past, 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
But that's when you do your finest work, though.
It is when I do my
It's also
finest.
when they start switching my lights
But it's
on.
also when there's so few people left in the club that they'll start shutting it down. And we could hear friends that were trying to get their keys back or hand their keys in talking over the background. Because when people and their voices carry because their voice, there was a lot of that. There was also, you could hear them going, oh, there's some people in that room and there's this lot over here, meaning us. And then the lights came on and it was
That's an interesting approach.
We just spring apart a little bit and go, oh, fucking the lights are on.
They should have just pulled the fire alarm on you. That would have cleared you out.
That probably was.
Sprinklers.
Well, I think Mrs. H sort of saying, be efficient once again to me. Was probably...
I did say at one point, I said, we've got 13 minutes left. Like, we need to just get on with it now.
My time to shine.
We were in our local club twice. It's happened now, literally probably about half an hour after most people have dressed down, the fire alarm's gone off.
Yeah, you stood downstairs in the bit near the dungeon and you can see people looking at each other and going, I will die here in this.
I would rather die in the building than go and stand in the dodgy end of a not particularly pleasant town in my pants.
I know that for one of our social events, there was a fire in one of the nearby hotels where about 6 or 7, or a fire alarm, where about 6 or 7 of the people were staying, and they'd all been sort of doing some interesting things and all had to chuck some clothes on and wander outside in the ultimate sort of walk of shame down 8 flights of stairs and standing outside of the rain and in whatever they turned up, which is always a good thing. Now, Mrs. H, you've got a couple of questions.
I do have some questions, and they're for both of you, but I'm firstly going to, I think, approach Jay with my question. So a bit of context. When I first got involved in this whole, I'm not going to say journey because that gives us the ick, but when we started all this stuff, I knew from me off that I was bisexual. That's one of the reasons we got into it, so that I could explore that further. However, what I encountered quite quickly was that there was this unwritten assumption, I think, from couples we played with or women that were involved in any kind of play experiences. There was an assumption that the woman in the partnership was always also going to be bisexual. Now, that assumption wasn't necessarily an assumption I made. However, it was an assumption that was very easily arrived at from other people. And there was also this awful kind of dynamic where even if you weren't, you would put on a show for your men kind of thing, which again was not that palatable.
I love how the 3 people not talking all made like their own version of I'm going to vomit in my own mouth face then.
Yeah, let's put a show for our boys. Absolutely not. So my question for you, Jay, is now I know that you don't identify as bisexual in any way. You identify as complete straight. Is that right?
I've put it on my fab profile just because it's easier than writing it next. Essentially, yes, we'll come to that in a minute. And
that's something I wanted to ask you was, do you find, therefore, that you do encounter the challenges of people just assuming you're going to play with the women are going to play together?
Yes.
How do you navigate that?
Quite a lot. I joked at the weekend, I've been disappointing women since June 22. So let's deal with the straight thing first. So is it because of we've traditionally used fab and you've only got about 4 choices? It's either straight or bi, and I was like, I'm sort of neither. So I'm quite happy to kiss women and have a bit of a feel around, but ultimately women are not necessarily
keeping it on the top halves. Top
half, yeah. I'm happy for women to play with me if they would like to do that, but I'm not. I just personally don't feel that I want to reciprocate. But it is sort of situational. Yes, I do feel like there is a little bit of an assumption that is going to be the case, and it sometimes, particularly we're based more northern, it feels more like that up here, but I don't know whether that's just because when we've been in the south, we've been in your group and they're maybe perhaps a little bit more, I don't know, slightly different crowd. But yeah, it does feel a little bit like that up here, and they'll sort of send the woman over to approach you because women kissing is okay. But we've managed to sort of...
it's never been a problem in an actual play situation.
And actually, I've noticed certainly within your community, people are better at just before we start, straight or bi, straight kind of let's get the ground rules sorted. But yeah, it is something definitely that there is that assumption. But then on the flip side, the boys can't be gay. No, we can't have bi boys because that's not acceptable. That is shifting slightly, I think. But that is it. There is a very double standard.
Yeah. But again, I guess it's more kind of the situations we've ended up playing and the people we've ended up playing with that there's always mostly has been a bit more of an upfront connection or chat or something that means that there's not been any situations that have been uncomfortable for that, awkward for that reason. And it's not, but it is also a useful filter though when we're talking to people in a bar or whatever, and they kind of reference the putting on a show kind of a thing, or like, I'd love to be there to see that, and you're like, well, yeah,
lovely, thank you very much. I'm just going to go and talk to these people over here. Yeah, because of our play style, I think because we tend to get to know people rather than just kind of turn up and pile in. It's not been an issue, but you can tell that some people, there is a bit of an assumption, yeah.
What have been the main challenges that you've faced? Obviously, you talked a little about a lack of bi-ness there, perhaps, but what other sort of things have been a challenge?
Very, very early on, we're going to have to be a little bit careful so that we protect the guilty. We played with a couple, in inverted commas, went round to, we met them previously, went round to theirs for a play date, a private play date, our first one ever. We'd probably been in the lifestyle maybe about 5 weeks.
We met them on our first night.
We met them on our very first night. They knew that we were new.
Just chatted with them then.
Yeah, anyway, there was a couple of red flags that if I look back now, if it was us walking in now, we'd have just gone, thank you very much. This has been a lovely conversation. We're just going to do one. But of course we were new and slightly naive and what have you, and taking people, I guess, at face value. But we started playing originally with our own partners and then the boys swapped over, and she excused herself. Anyway, there was then a bit of a hoo-ha in the WhatsApp chat as apparently they had split up. And we were like, oh my God. I mean, you can imagine that new in, we were like, oh my God, what have we done? And it took quite a lot that took a huge step back to go, hang on a minute. They invited us into their relationship. If they can't deal with that, then that's their problem. And it turned out that they were actually friends with benefits, and she had caught feelings that he didn't have and all of that sort of stuff. So we have since seen him, and we've sort of had a bit of a catch up and whatnot. But yeah, that was quite interesting early doors.
Wow. Very
early doors. Yeah.
There was another slightly odd one that was, again, we'd kind of met a couple where they were up our way. He was working up this way and she'd come to visit, and we had quite a nice time, and then had arranged to kind of meet up just him because she was back home. And in hindsight, with naivety, we had tried to be accommodating and kind of include her in what was going on by setting it up so that she could Skype in on the telly in her living room to be part of the chat, to be part of the build up, and then kind of part of whatever may follow on. And that just wasn't a satisfactory thing, because she was just this voice of God you mentioned, as the Zoom person says we're recording. There's this voice of God knows what in the corner on the telly chipping in.
She was almost like a conductor, and she said, I want to see you do that to her, it was.
We tried to freeze and pretend that we'd lost connection at one point, but it didn't stick.
Yeah, going through a tunnel, they say swiping their hands in front of the camera.
So awkward.
But again, it's one of those, like, we thought we were doing the right thing, and in hindsight, like, just that wasn't going to work.
Yeah, it would have been better if we just not included her at all in some ways. But you live and learn, don't you? And then I guess there was another one that was, again, slightly knocked us for six a little bit. So again, quite early on, actually, probably only about 4 months in, we'd met a couple in the club. We'd been chatting to them all night. Their relationship was slightly strained. They'd probably been together about 4 or 5 months. He'd never been to a sex club before, whereas she'd done stuff with previous partners. So it was a bit more knew what the deal was. And we'd been almost kind of coaching them through it, even though we were still relative newbies ourselves. We were kind of coaching them through it. And I ended up having a little bit of a kiss with her at some point. Anyway, we just kind of, at the end of the night, wish them on their way. And every now and again, we kind of go, wonder how they're getting on. And then I was sat one day in a meeting, not fully paying attention, like scrolling on LinkedIn, and her face popped up. And my heart absolutely froze for 2 reasons. First of all, because my two worlds had collided. So we've kept our swinging life very, very separate from our vanilla lives. And we've gone to quite a lot of extremes to make sure that they don't cross over. So that was the first thing, was like, oh my God, like what the hell? But secondly, we actually found out that she'd committed suicide.
Holy.
And so it was a real heart-stopping moment. And I felt quite guilty for having that reaction, because we didn't know her. We'd spent about maybe 3 hours in her company over the night. But for that short amount of time, we were obviously quite sort of intimate. And then all of a sudden to hear, this was only probably about 6 weeks afterwards as well. So we'd met her, and it was only like a month or so afterwards. I did end up so I looked at her boyfriend's LinkedIn, and he then weirdly found me on Facebook and messaged. We did have a nice message backwards and forwards to just, because I was like, I don't want to message. I don't know whether we played any part in this. Like, did this factor into anything at all? So it turns out that she's got quite a lot of other issues, but that was quite heart-stopping.
Like, obviously a very, very terrible thing, but it's kind of, again, it's those things that you just don't, all those scenarios you don't think about, that don't know how, and you find yourself in these very weird situations trying to figure out what your new normal looks like.
But also, like, one of my colleagues at work noticed that I'd sort of frozen, and she sent me a private message on my personal phone going, "Are you okay?" And I had to go, yeah, it's all good, because I couldn't say, no, actually, random person that's taken their own life. Like, you can't. There's no vanilla way of explaining this scenario, so you just have to kind of go, yeah, it's all good. So yeah, that was quite an interesting one as well.
It's really tricky when you're starting out, because, like you say, you just can't counter for everything. And as much as you can prepare and you can watch things like Swing and listen to podcasts and all that sort of stuff, life is just too random. And we've had couples split up when we've been there and they've been in our house. That was an interesting one. And we've had sort of people be too drunk and almost pass out. And then when you start adding in the events as well, because that's your next learning curve. It's like not just regular events, because I'm quite used to doing events and stuff at work. It's fine. I've done like hundreds of those things, but just the randomness of sexy people plus an event plus God knows what else is really tricky to manage and guess what's going to happen.
There's always some curveball that you just haven't considered will happen one day, and then when it does, like, another one.
It's definitely chaos theory. There's definitely Jeff Goldblum sat in the back of a van putting drips of water on your hand.
Oh, I wish.
You absolutely do.
Like Jeff Goldblum.
So talking of being new, what sort of advice would you give to newbies? And communication is absolutely not the one answer you can give, because everyone says it, even though I've banned people from saying it.
This is why we prep. So I think the biggest thing is you do you. So I think there's sometimes a bit of a pressure to this is what swinging looks like, and you have to do this, you have to do that, which I think you've covered something similar along these lines before. But you do you, and if it feels right, go for it. And if it doesn't feel right, don't.
There's no pre-prescribed thing that you have to do or way you have to behave. But also, don't be intimidated by what you see on the internet. This applies to life generally. But the stuff you see on your Fabs and even on your Swing Hubs and your Spicy Matches and your Pineapple app and your Waxes, all of those good places, you see people who are very out there or look a certain way or don't look a certain way or appear to be all about one thing or another. Like that isn't the be all and end all. There generally will be your kind of tribe, as you described it, of people out there. It's just a case of hopefully not wading through too much shit before you find it. But there is a group out there somewhere that will fit and match.
Yeah, and I think just don't compare yourself to what other people are doing. There are some people who are essentially with a Panini sticker album going, right, I need MFM, I need FFM, I need foursome, fivesome, literally ticking them off. And some of them you will see on their profiles and like done, needs.
There's someone on Fab near us who keeps asking to have a father and son.
But don't compare yourself to what anyone else is doing, and take it at your own pace and do what feels right for you. And if something feels like a step too far or you're pushing yourself too hard, then don't do it. And if it feels right, then go for it. I think the other thing as well is do not start trying to rearrange whatever your boundaries are on the fly when you're in the high of sort of mid-coitus. Of just going, well, I think all of a sudden changing what we agreed to is all going to be good and we're not going to regret this later. It's like, no, stick for now, shift them, like debrief afterwards and shift them next time. But doing it on the fly is generally not going to end well.
It opens up so much risk, really, doesn't it? And it's
yeah.
And when we've spoken to people and they've done that, it's so often when things have gone wrong and it leads to that uncontrollable emotion because you've got no means of knowing whether it's going to work well or not. And I'm sure for some people it will be great and they can run with that on the fly thing, but certainly for us, I think it would cause issues.
I agreed. agreed. I want to ask the next question because it's my favourite topic.
Go on then.
It's that good old Room 101. And there's many things I would chuck into Room 101, but what's the one thing that you would like to throw into Room 101?
Get one each. Yeah. Everyone gets one.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go with the preconceptions and the stereotypes. So we sort of, all girls are bi, all boys are straight, and the stereotypes that still go around that, I think they just need properly binning off, and you just need to take everyone for who they are rather than anything else. I realise that's probably something that just needs removing from society more widely, but...
Do you want to chuck some world peace in there while we're at it?
Why not?
Well, no, you can't chuck it in Room 101. Jesus.
All right, let's chuck world war.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
All the world's troubles.
In one little tiny room.
Yeah, I think for me, like I said, one of the things that I struggle with or trying to figure out is kind of believing that somebody would be into me, into us. Obviously, they'd be into Jay. But that, if you could skip that whole bit, that would be nice. The whole kind of, do you like us, we like you, the awkward dance. I would like to be fitted with a little radar that kind of, you can look at somebody, and if they like the look of you and you like the look of them, you get a little ding, ding, ding. And then you can kind of proceed or not proceed, knowing that at least you're not going to get burned in a way. Like, I know there's body signs and all that kind of jazz body language I'm led to believe is good for this. But that would be nice. But we're talking Fantasyland stuff. So that's my Fantasyland.
Well, I suspect that Black Mirror would take that and make you hate it and make you regret it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, probably. But I think there is that, it's that, do you put yourself out there and make yourself incredibly vulnerable and kind of either lean in for a kiss or kind of message someone in the hope that you don't get rejected? Yeah. And I think, again, coming back to the reading the body language, we've definitely, or I feel like I've got better at it, but there are definitely people who are not very good at it. And there was actually one time where we got retrospectively asked whether we would have played with a couple, and that got quite tricky to handle.
I think it is really tricky, and I think you can live your life looking back at these things and investigating them and overthinking it. I often, in fact, I said it today in a different chat group. I said it's a bit like when you have
a different chat group.
Yeah, I am. Awful of me. Not even my own. I'm everywhere
you must
now.
Be in like 100 by now.
Probably. But that moment when you have an argument with someone and then you go away from that argument and you think of a great clap back and a great comeback. We should have said something like that. And I look back at some encounters where I'm like, why didn't I say, I don't know, why don't we slip into something a little less uncomfortable and making that move and being really, but that never happens because I'm often worried about saying that. I'm worried about the rejection. I don't read signals that well. I think it's fair to say.
I thought you were going to go into some like no fear quote with you miss 100% of the opportunities you don't take.
Yes, this is 100% true, but I still shit myself every shot I take nonetheless.
That's why you miss the opportunities if you're shitting yourself.
Yeah, that's why. So many bathroom changes in one night. It's terrible. But it is true. I often think back to those moments where I was like, if only I'd have asked this, or why didn't we ask that? And then they move off with somebody else. And I'm like, that could have been us. Why isn't that us? And my brain is going, well, you didn't actually mention it to them. And why didn't you?
And they're probably there going, well, I kind of wasn't sure, but they didn't really seem interested. So we moved on.
Yeah. And that's happened so many times. And throughout the career, for want of a better phrase, certainly in early days, we're universally awful at it. These days, I think we're a bit better at it, but we're less good at doing that as a duo, I think, which makes it even more complex. Like, I don't think we're that great at going, hey, we like both of you. And being
I'm all right at that, thank you.
Are you?
I literally said it a couple of weeks ago to some people.
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
You did. You literally said, I'm going to have an adult conversation now and be brave.
I sat there and I explained.
Which was really relevant.
People in the room.
But it is.
Why didn't we do something about that?
Well, yes, but I think many of us suffer with that same thing. And if there was, like you say, an app or a badge that lit up, or can we get some VR glasses where we tap twice? Are we just like literally swiping on a dating site, but with our own visuals? And
you say, I think that might bring more horrors than it's worthwhile. But maybe we just all need to just figure that self-confidence out, right?
Well, maybe. I think I live in the hope that people do like me, but the crippling reality that no one did would be awful. So I'd rather live not knowing and not asking.
I'm sure.
But then we'd all be very different people if we were brimming with self-confidence.
Exactly.
So
exactly that. So what I'd like to know about is your ideal date. And there is a specific bit that I want to ask Jay about this, because if we were to talk about your fantasy and your ideal date and fantasy, how would that pan out?
So that's a very interesting question, because I don't get fantasies. And that's one of the things that I've learned about myself in the lifestyle, is that whereas everyone else seems to have this never-ending list of things that they would either like to do or have done to them, I don't experience that. And it's my absolute nightmare is when we're sort of chatting to people and they go, oh, what's your fantasy? Because I don't have any.
Well, there's quite a lot of pressure though there, isn't it? Because people sort of automatically assume it's that you're not comfy, or you're not willing to express it, or you don't feel able to express it, as opposed to just flat out there isn't one.
There genuinely is tumbleweed. And I actually asked on a different community when I first sort of started realizing that perhaps I worked in a slightly different way to other people. I was on a different chat group and I was like, right, this is my thing. Does anyone else kind of experience this? There was actually a lady who really beautifully explained it, which I really need to memorize what she said, because she articulated it far better than I ever can. But I got a great long list of either people saying, this is a massive red flag if you tell a guy that you're going to play with that you don't have a fantasy and you don't mind, and they're pushing you for something, then you shouldn't be playing with them. I was like, no, this is genuinely coming from a place of care. They want to try and make sure I have a good time. And then there was just a whole group of people who were saying, well, you must have, can't you just give them a list? And I was like, well, yeah, I could, but it's meaningless. So it's might as well ask the first person in the street, because it's not genuine. It's in the moment and it flows. So yeah, that one's quite an interesting one for me, because I don't have it.
So on the subject of fantasy, so assuming that maybe now and then you ring the devil's doorbell, what do you think about?
I don't particularly though.
Interesting.
No,
that's fascinating.
not particularly.
Once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
So you say.
I couldn't even tell you. I don't, it there's no, don't know. I don't think I could even, I can't, yeah, just white noise and tumbleweed.
Well, that's never been something that's particularly been a go-to for you for sleep or for sleep or anything else.
But also, there's it's not even like I replay something that's happened. I genuinely couldn't tell.
Well,
that feels ridiculous. I don't know the answer.
But it's kind of interesting to me, because again, when we were chatting about coming to do this with you guys, and that was one of the things that you were kind of panicking about, was like, well, what would my ideal date look like? Because we haven't really been on one, or we don't really know. And you just could not visualize. And I was like, but it doesn't need to be something you've done. It's like, what would be a string of events that you wanted to do that you might enjoy? And you just really struggled with pulling that together.
That's fascinating.
Now I feel bad having asked that question.
That's what the edit's for, right?
Well, I mean, there's obviously things that you like, I guess.
Nando's. Lots of Nando's with Fanta sprinkling on the top.
Nando's fantasy. No.
But this is back to that, like it's doing nice things with nice people. Like you're very much you have a lot of fun in the moments. You don't pillow princess anything either if it's okay.
I mean,
you join in, you make sure everything and everyone is taken care of at the right appropriate times and moments. It's just, if I ask you about it afterwards, this is another struggle of my life. If you ask Jay, like, how did you like that meal, or what did you think of the film, or what did you think of whatever? You goes, yeah, it was fine.
High praise indeed.
That is an absolute ringing endorsement. So I make a joke about having to mentally recalibrate, which up the register, but I think it does fundamentally kind of tie back to a similar sort of root cause, I think.
So we didn't actually give you an answer to our perfect date, did we?
Well, I've got an answer.
Right, go on then. Let's go. I'm going to go on your date. Where are you taking me?
Well, we funnily enough, we've got one booked in the diary.
That's true.
So there's one scenario we've done and one scenario coming up that I would describe as being pretty close to kind of an ideal lifestyle weekend. One was we ended up with a gaggle of us, for want of a better term, in an Airbnb in the Midlands somewhere, where we kind of arrive on the Friday night and we didn't have any particular agenda for the Saturday, a bit of a walk, a bit of a blow out in the fresh air, for want of a better expression.
It had a rooftop terrace.
Grabbing a pizza, spending some time in the jacuzzi. But it's that ability to be in a safe space with safe people who are funny, friendly, fun to be around and letting your guard down and just enjoying that time. And then the thing that we have planned is there's a couple that we get on like a house on fire with that are coming up our way to go to a comedy gig. And then there's 2 clubs in our local area. So they're here for 2 nights. We'll go see both clubs, but one of them is the scene of the crime where our adventure started. We've never had a particularly great experience there. So it will be nice to go and have a good experience there, which I'm sure we will do.
Excellent. A good friend of ours always says service station rules, and that you can have a great time in a service station if you go there with the right people.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's the tricky thing about clubs. And in fact, we were talking about this just today. When you talk about clubs and events and stuff, your review is often entirely based on the night that you had. And did you hook up? Did you meet people? Not about the venue itself, which can only do so much for you. And it's a really interesting thing.
It's the balance of expectations, isn't it? Of what you take in.
But I mean, particularly with us being a little bit out of the way, I guess, we quite often, because we've done clubs that are kind of out of our region, for want of a better phrase, when we say we've been to Penthouse, like, oh, what's it like? It's like, well, we were there as part of a private party, so I've got no idea what it's like on a normal Saturday night, but we had a great time. But then it was a curated group of people who were put there.
It's a strange one with Penthouse, because we've been there a couple of times when we've not hosted there, and it's been those particular nights happen to be really quiet ones. Not suggesting that all nights at Penthouse are quiet, often that it is quite busy, but I think on one night there was about 17, 18 people or something in it.
Really quiet.
And you can imagine the size of that place with
you'd rattle around.
Yeah, it was quite a weird experience. It was, and that was quite strange. And so our initial impression was great club, but if there's no one there, then it doesn't give you the vibe that you're after. And it's really hard to play with people if they don't exist.
Particularly if you can't fantasize them.
Well, yeah, if you can't fantasize about it, then yeah.
So do you have any questions for us at all that you'd like us to answer while we're here?
Yeah, I think I
go first.
I was curious, like you're on episode 198 by this point. Like
about that.
It's a fair few. It's a big number. You've been doing the events and the socials and that kind of stuff alongside Kate, depending on what kind of an event it is. I was curious, kind of how embedded is doing this podcast? How much is it a part of your lives that if you had to stop doing it, how bereft would you feel?
I'd have so much more free time. So much more free time.
I mean, Mr. H threatens on a regular basis to stop it because it's a very lone wolf pursuit for him. He does all the stuff, all the techie stuff, and just turn up, apparently.
I have...
Just dial it in.
Yeah.
Hello.
Just literally phoning it in there. No, not at all. She doesn't. But so I have a hissy fit about once a month or so about the podcast. I'm going to burn it all to the ground, delete it all. No one's going to be able to find anything. And we're not going to be doing events, and we're going to like live the life or whatever, and
go back into your hobbit hole.
Yeah, exactly that.
It's very boring.
No, it wouldn't be, because that's not saying that we wouldn't be in the lifestyle. It's just we wouldn't be doing the podcast. I think that the podcast, to put it into context, there's quite a bit of prep that goes into doing an episode. There's quite a lot of editing. Obviously, there's the recording of it itself, of which you were part of, Mrs. H. And then there's the editing, there's the publishing, there's the promoting, of which I do all of that stuff. And that can be anything from 5-6 hours in a fortnight to 15 hours, depending on how complex the episode is and how much time and effort has gone into organising it. And then you put it out there, and then you get a review on iTunes that says I'm fucking awful human being, and that I'm really patronizing to Mrs. H, which is probably true. And then you kind of go, is it worth it for that? And that's where I struggle a bit with it, because we don't get paid for it. We do a Patreon, but that basically pays for the hosting, and for what it pays for is the badges that you get if you come to our event. And probably doesn't even cover that. So there is no money that comes in that pays for all of our time and effort. And likewise, when we host events, we don't earn a penny. Yeah. And I think that's where the frustration hits me, and that all of this stuff happens. We work tirelessly behind the scenes to make these events work for as many people as we can. And then I kind of go, well, it's great, and I love the community, and I want to put back into it, because I think there's a lot to be had for it. But at the same point, it does get a challenge for me in particular, I think. And then,
so that's like the left-hand side. Is there any on the right-hand side that it is fun?
Oh yeah, and it really is. And I think looking at Candyland just the weekend gone by, so many people have been in touch and said they had a fantastic time. People whose first time was this event. That's the first thing they've ever done. And they had a riot and they loved it. And they've like, we've met people that will talk to us and will engage with us. That fills your cup. That the people that write to you and say, hey, we listened to that. The other episode we did quite recently, another interview, and they said that we listened to this and it was a really valid point and we really enjoyed that couple's perspective. And thank you for bringing them to us in that way. So it does fill you up and it does give you a sense of satisfaction and pride for the community that you create. And like the Discord, that's God knows how many 100 people in it now. I'm tremendously proud of that. But at the same point, that doesn't come free.
Not without effort.
Yeah, without effort. And I think that's the bit that I remember. And so for 95% of the time, I'm chirpy and chippy and I love it and it's great. And then I flip a table and I go, well, I'm going to burn it all to the ground and I hate everything now because especially if it goes wrong.
I do get all this and I have nothing but admiration for the amount of effort you put into. And you're right, we don't make any money out of any of all this stuff. We do it purely because we want to better the community. But I think part of me is so privileged, I think, to be able to at least normalise some very socially unacceptable, unorthodox topics sometimes. And the more we can chip away at normalising things which people shouldn't feel shame for and should just embrace who they are and what they do and who they choose to be with, the better. And so it's also really wonderful when you do end up covering a topic which people do reach out about and say, oh, it's really great that you covered something like this, because you don't often hear things like this talked about the way we talk about it. I suppose for me, it's a chat with my best mate, you know, and he absolutely is my soulmate and my best friend. And I find it very cathartic sometimes to sit down and talk to Mr. H about things that I think so many couples probably would have a better relationship if they made the time to have those conversations with each other anyway. So again, normalizing things which can strengthen your relationship is really important as well.
Yeah.
It's all very valid. It's an interesting one. I like the running the events. You're like, yay, we've brought this great community together, but boo, we're hosting, so we don't get to interact with them in the way that we like. It's like, hey, well, look at all these sexy people. No touchy, hosty.
Yeah.
And you do get those moments where you're like,
you do get FOMO from that, and I understand that. You get it more so than me because I don't so have as much FOMO as you do. And
I'm inherently greedy. There is that, I suppose.
For me, I go, this is wonderful. All these people are coming together, and not literally, one assumes, but all these people are here in
that one time
to have
right now over me
when we caused a flood.
And that makes me really, really happy. It really does. And I appreciate we don't necessarily get to enjoy the spoils of that sometimes if sometimes at all.
But I do.
But that's the nature of what we do sometimes.
It is, yeah, I do. I do like your idea of an ideal date. And that's something that we've kind of done previously, like get an Airbnb with a few people. I love that sense of adventure and bringing everyone together in that community aspect. But particularly if you've got your group of friends that you all know where you stand, you all know your approach, you're all comfortable with each other, and I think that's always a delightful moment. Do you have a question that you'd like to throw our way?
Yeah, so my one is, do you think it makes it easier or harder for you that you are well known in inverted commas? So the fact that you do the pod and people sort of feel like they know you even though they've never met you, do you think that works to your advantage, or do you think that sometimes detracts? Or
oh, it's a blessing and a curse, I think. I mean, I'd be lying if I said it hadn't in the past gone in our favour, because you do have that kind of, they already kind of know something about you, and maybe that's why they've reached out.
Yeah, I mean, there have been people that have wanted to play with us because we do the podcast and we've done the TV shows, and sometimes that's happened, and sometimes we've recognised it early enough to be a bit like, oh, this feels a little bit icky, but also the inner penis in me, as it were, was going, oh, how hot are they first?
Did you
inner penis voice.
Say that?
Yeah, that one. Whatever it is, the outer penis. But the little penis in my head going, yes, they would be nice to fuck those people. We should continue to make friends with them and do the sexy on them. But that's rare. That's really rare.
That inner penis in you sounds like a right sort.
Do the sexy on them.
Yeah, do the sexy. Going to totally do a sex on them. That's great. In many ways, it is great in that people know who we are. But as a result, some people won't have anything to do with this. And that's the nature of it. If that means they've listened to who we are or seen us on the show or don't care for what we do, then in a way it helps the selection process.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like creating the events and that community and the socials and stuff, that's brought, for the most part, our kind of people to us.
Yeah.
Occasionally you'll get people who have listened to the show and have not taken out what you've been trying to put across. They've really read it wrong. And that's like, oh, and not to compare yourself to like songwriters and stuff, but when someone totally misreads the meaning of a song and like Good Riddance, Time of Your Life being played at weddings. It's like one of the number one wedding songs and people have clearly not really listened to it. It's like that. And so there is that element to it. I think for the most part, it's been a pretty good thing, and it's brought us to the attention of some really nice people, or introduce us to their friends or whatever. So it's helped grow that community. It's not to say there hasn't been a downside, and sometimes when you're sat there talking to people, it's quite funny because if people really listen to the show, if they're really into it, and they've listened to all 197 plus the crossovers and all the other stuff, and they've seen the TV show, when you start talking, they just sort of fade out, and they just kind of glaze over because they're just listening to your voice, and they just they're having their own personal podcast in a conversation. And then they're like, oh, you don't know anything about us. And then they don't say anything. And then you end up filling in the gaps, and they like you filling in the gaps. So we go away going, well, I felt like I talked loads, not unusual for me, of course, but I feel like I know nothing about them. And I'm like, oh. And they said that they were going to tell us lots about themselves, and they just didn't stump that. But that's happened a few times, right? So yeah, it's that's rambly, but you'd expect no less from me, I'm sure.
I was going to say, this sounds like ideal date territory. Talk about yourself and do a sexy.
He does frequently. This is absolutely his ideal date.
Talk about myself.
Have I told you about myself?
That's why my ideal date often involves karaoke, because it's putting another microphone in front of me. It's just a different way for you to hear my voice. And I had no guarantee on quality on that either.
Yeah, I'm not getting involved in that one.
Hey, we saw your stamp today. That looked like a seal of approval.
So somebody bought me that stamp for Christmas.
Me.
And
this stamp featured.
It was on our Discord chat. Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Yeah. So yeah.
My immediate comment was, I wonder if anyone's got that as a tattoo.
Someone did have stamped on them when the day I gave it to you.
Yes.
No, the
day after you get. So someone may have had that stamped on them, which is fine. I was
permanently.
Not permanently. It washed off apparently after a couple of days, so it is relatively
washed
safe.
Off with what?
I don't know. I wasn't there at that point. I'd long since disappeared.
Were there any UV lights anywhere?
No, UV lights in a swinging household's probably not a great shout. Or indeed one with pets either. No one wants any of that nonsense.
No.
Not a good shout. But yeah, so I do have a stamp. We did at one point have temporary tattoos with our faces on, which probably speaks a lot about my ego.
Yeah.
It was a drawing that I'd done of myself. That's how low I'll stoop occasionally. But it was good fun, and people did wear them, so that's the main thing.
If you had no choice, you slapped it on them.
No, they actually wanted
and
it.
also the temporary tattoo.
Did you not ask for consent?
They did.
I'm going to say that room 101's about to get something else in it.
Sweet. No, I'll keep this. This is a delightful story, the likes of which anyone can tell their family probably. So anything else that you want to ask us?
We did have a joke that we would like to tell you, which is a bit of an in-joke with some others, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, please.
Yes.
Please
Yeah,
do.
so it was used at one of your events as a line to pull, potentially.
Okay.
And it's become a bit of a running joke. So what do you call a Frenchman wearing sandals?
Go for it.
Philippe Falon.
This is intentionally terrible, but someone out there might take it quite kindly.
Yes.
Loving that.
I know what's going to happen. You're going to cut this out, or I'm going to have to cut this out and put this at the end with Carolyn reading it out.
Oh,
And
yeah,
take it as a-
we need Carolyn reading it.
Have you got a joke? And she'll be like, yeah, do that.
You told us quite a good one at Candyland. We got a live joke.
Well, don't spoil it then. Just it's the same one.
Oh, is it the same one?
She can only remember one at a time.
But yes, I do remember telling you that joke.
For all the blowing that we had done, we got a joke.
Which
Oh,
in
dear.
context sounds a lot worse than it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, those gummy bears will never be the same again.
Those gummy bears, honestly, I blew them up from the first point and then stood up and I was dizzy for like 10 minutes. I was like, hey, this is great. And then
They were quite flaccid, those bears.
you
just couldn't, like, the little bit of the nipple that you have to do with your teeth. He's clearly not got the expertise.
I think the fact that I did all of them by myself was probably why they weren't so good. Thank you.
I
And then
finished your bears
what
off.
got me is I did those and then while we were in, this is all for our room crawl at Candyland as we were prepping, and then blew up these, I don't know, like, what are they, 40 centimeters?
6 bears, but they were quite big, weren't they?
Yeah, they were quite big.
Yeah.
Blew those up initially, not to they weren't going to pop standard. That's definitely how inflated they were. And then I was like, oh, I'm a bit dizzy now. Sat down, and then immediately Kate threw some other balloons at me to blow up.
Sitting down.
And yeah, while you're there, just crack on with these. So I did end up blowing up a lot of balloons, which all fell down rather gloriously. And it looked like a clown's crack den was my official description
Yes,
of
you
the
showed
room.
us
It's like the party had already happened.
Yeah,
And
it
we
was-
walked in the next morning like, oh.
Yeah, I think blowing them up the day before because they were just normal balloons. They were just, the helium had all disappeared, hadn't it? We've got a big bag with most of our room crawl stuff in it. So other than the Switch, which we need for Mario Kart, the rest of it just sort of lives in a bag. But I need to take the wank Skittle bottles out because you actually can't see the Skittles inside for all the dust that's come off.
Surely that is a picture that's got to go in the Discord and the chat at some point.
Absolutely.
I can put it in alongside the bag of dicks because I very much overcated on the dick and boobage required for trophies.
There was one particular highlight from our room call which just made me absolutely howl. And I didn't take a picture because they weren't people that I knew particularly well. So I didn't want to be randomly taking pictures of people. But in the game String Me Along, where you have to feed string down your clothes and back and then up and down the next person in your team, we had 10 people in the room. And they very quickly worked out that if they weren't wearing clothes, then it was easier to thread it through. So I just kind of set them away. I looked over to watch Mario Kart for a second. And when I turned around, it was just like pretty much everyone was down to their pants. And there was like open shirts. There were shirts on the floor. And I was like, I wished I could have just taken a picture. They were brilliant, all of them. They like properly threw themselves into it.
My work here is done.
Yeah, and they got quite competitive.
That's good. That's what we want. We want them to take part and then go to the club.
But there is no evidence of this other than our collective memories.
That's probably a good thing. We'd have to burn a lot of that evidence if we had.
Yeah.
I want to say a huge thank you to both of you for coming onto the show. It's been absolutely fabulous having a lovely chat with you. Where can people find you in the world?
So we are on most platforms. We are Ticket2 and Ride, all one word. So we're on most things.
Yeah, we've kind of, not unfortunately, we are on Fab. That is the one that is kind of the Rolodex of keeping in touch with people. And as Swing Hub kind of is slowly picking up steam, we are also there, but not a mega presence. But then we're app slags, so we have dipped our toes in all of the different things to see what happens.
Yeah, I would say they're probably the main two.
That might be just the technologist in me.
Well, you've got to try them all, right? It's important.
Exactly.
So just to confirm, that's Ticket2Ride with the number 2, right?
Just for the board game and not the song, as the very weird message we got on Fab
We
once
had a few,
came through trying to quote some Beatles reference and ultimately told us that we had disappointed them preemptively, which I thought was quite mean.
Hang on. So we've had Penny Lane on the show and now we've got Ticket2Ride. We are slowly working our way
through the Beatles back catalogue.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's absolutely been our pleasure to have you on.
Oh, well, thanks
for having us.
I'd like to say a massive, massive thank you to Ticket2Ride, B&J, for coming onto the show. Not literally coming.
B&J.
But for taking time out to speak to us, having a good old natter, revealing some of their precious secrets, and, just generally being awesome people.
Mm.
Oh.
I have a joke.
You have a joke, do you?
I do have a joke.
Well, this is not the joke bit.
Well,
this
is
this
it
is
not?
the post-interview bit, right?
Oh,
The bit
yeah.
that sits- so
okay, well, I'll hold my joke then.
in terms of components, dear, you see, the way it works is normally we do an intro, then we play the thing, then we come back in and we go, hey, thanks, folks, you were great. The bit where we say, hey, if you
Yeah.
want to find out where
Yeah.
Ticket to Ride are, look for the show
100%.
notes, listen to what they said.
Well, I foreshadowed the fact that there was a joke coming at the other end bit.
Well, yes, thank you for doing that.
That's it.
Also, they did send us a message to say that if you wanted to reach out about having a bit of a lack of fantasy, about being a straight girl in a bi world, get in touch and reach out to them, and they'll be more than happy to chat to you.
Yeah.
I can't back that up in any shape or form, but I'm sure they will. They seem very
they
chatty.
will.
Yeah, I'm sure
Be
they'll do
nice.
that. They'll be
They're
lovely.
lovely.
Why not? Why not? So do that. That'll be awesome. Anything else that we need to talk about? Oh, yes. Don't forget, tickets are available for our 19th of April.
Easter extravaganza.
That's not what it's about.
I know,
That's
but
really,
it is in Easter.
it's in Manchester is where it is at.
Manchester.
Manchester.
Easter.
So if you want to come to Manchester and have a great time,
Yeah.
go and get your tickets now because they're going to be awesome.
Well, I'm excited. Never been to Manchester before.
Well, we've covered this
I reckon
earlier
it might
on.
be good.
You reckon it might be good?
Yeah.
You reckon the combined forces of you, Kate, and I hosting a social event somewhere different
Up north.
Up north? What can go wrong?
Yeah.
Nothing can. It's going to be
Nothing.
awesome.
It'll be great.
It's your chance to meet us. Which don't let that put you off because other cool people will also be
there will
coming.
be other people
There will be other
available.
better people than us. Come along to that. And we've already sold quite a few tickets already.
Nice.
Thanks to the sort of pre-sales in our Discord. Oh, and don't forget, if you want to sign up to our Patreon, that's cool. You'll also get early access to different things and get bonus episodes, which is a cool, sexy thing that you can do and support us.
Cool.
Right, enough self-promotion. Mrs. H, do you think?
And thank you for hopping into our bed.
You've got a joke. You've got a... Mrs. H has got a
Wait a
joke.
minute, this is a football song. Why?
Is it?
Yeah, you're thinking football's coming home.
Am I?
You are singing football's coming home.
No, I'm not.
What were you singing?
I was. You've got a joke. It's my own composition that I've
No,
made
it
up.
was
There's in
absolutely
no way.
a football song.
Gosh, it disturbs me to tell you, Mrs. H, that I make all of my own songs.
No, that is absolutely a football song. You were singing the song for football's
What?
coming home.
No.
You were.
Got a joke.
You know, you're going to get sued one day by your
Probably.
blatant rip-offs of other themes.
No, these are all original compositions
Are
made
they?
by me, Mr. H.
Okay, yeah,
Mr.
sure.
H definitely wrote that. Fuck you, Johnny Williams. No, please stay. Don't.
Oh my
don't fuck you.
God, no!
Stay alive.
Don't, he's
Stay
a national
alive.
treasure.
He's not our national treasure.
He's a national
He is a
Along
treasure.
with David Attenborough.
And they must
They
both be preserved and
Must
protected
be
at all
protected.
costs.
Yes, absolutely. that.
Yes, them. Protect them. Do your best.
Anyway, do you want to hear this joke or
No,
what?
I've decided.
Do you not?
No, I've decided I don't want to hear it.
You.
Are you going to tell it anyway? No doubt.
I'm going to tell it. Don't, and if you know it, don't jump in and spoil it.
And that's why the chicken crossed the road.
No. Are you ready for this joke?
I was born ready.
All right, cool. Right, the joke is this. Hang on, let me think. Yeah, I've got it again. What is the female equivalent of teabagging?
Go on then. What is the female equivalent of teabagging?
It's a flappuccino.
There we go.
It's a drink-based pun
I
based on genitals.
is that because teabagging is like tea bags?
Well, yeah, tea bags is a drink, right?
therefore
It's a tea.
drink-based.
Tea.
And
Yeah.
Frappuccino is like a
Is
cappuccino. Yeah,
Drink.
which is also a
Also a
drink.
hot drink-based pun.
Yes, I see what you've done there.
But there's genitals involved in both.
Ladies have flaps,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
men have
balls, which are like tea bags. Now that we've broken it down for you, we hope that you find the joke particularly funny.